We live in a society based on stories. But when we look around us, we can see that some of these stories are not working. Our society is becoming more and more unequal. In the world, 1 billion people are overweight, while 1 billion people starve. And climate change, pollution, and the destruction of the natural world are threatening our future. In this course, we explore the stories we live by. I'm Aaron Stibbe. I'm a reader in ecological linguistics here at the University of Gloucestershire. I guess I'm interested in how language shapes us as people and the society around us. And if the stories that the society is based on aren't working, then I'd like to explore ways of using language that tell new stories. But what are stories? We can get a glimpse at the stories we live by looking at a typical online newspaper. The main story, as it often is about terrorism. Terrorism appears so often in the press that we can start seeing it as the greatest threat that we face. And as we scroll down the newspaper, we find articles about the economy and a preoccupation, almost an obsession with growth. Behind this is the story that economic growth, profit, getting richer is the goal of society, even though our endless consumption is causing all kinds of environmental problems. And as we scroll right down to the bottom, next to an article about sexy robots, the robot wars, we find an article, Life on Earth at Risk, say scientists. And if we click on it, we get a chilling message. Professor Will Steffen writes, "It's clear the economic system is driving us towards an unsustainable future, and people of my daughter's generation will find it increasingly hard to survive. History has shown that civilizations have risen, stuck to their core values, and then collapsed because they didn't change. That's where we are today." So Will Steffen talks about the core values, shared values which have put our society on a path towards collapse. Of course, one of those values is that economic growth is the main goal of society. And Mary Midgley talks of the myths we live by, ones which are leading our society down a dangerous path. Chet Bowers speaks of root metaphors, an overemphasis on the individual rather than the group, on technological progress, on the economy, and seeing humans as the centre of the world. And Kingsnorth and Hine speak of stories. The most dangerous story of all, they say, is the story of human centrality, of our ever-expanding control over nature, our right to perpetual economic growth, our ability to transcend all limits. And Ben Okri says that stories are the secret reservoir of values. Change the stories that individuals or nations live by, and you change the individuals and nations themselves. Now, in ecolinguistics, we take core values, stories, root metaphors, and myths, and we put them all together as the stories we live by. And there's 3 things that ecolinguistics does. It uses linguistic analysis to reveal the stories we live by. It questions these stories from an ecological perspective. And it contributes to the search for new stories to live by. Great, so let's look at an example of how ecolinguistics can reveal stories we live by. This example is about how we think about retail sales. Now, at Christmas a while back, 3 major supermarkets made less money than usual. They still made a profit, but they made a smaller profit than usual. Now, the reaction from the press treated this as if it was a tragedy.
Appalling.
Slump.
Horror show.
Decline.
Poorer.
Sobering.
Plagued.
Plunged.
Suffered.
Difficult.
Fears.
Disastrous.
Now, 6 months before that, there was a long, hot heat wave, and lots of sales of barbecue meat, suntan lotion, alcohol, slippers, and hay fever remedies. The newspapers, of course, reported this as something fantastic.
Highest.
Good news.
Welcome news.
Enjoyed.
Boom.
Promising.
Pick up.
Excellent.
Uplift.
Reward.
Good.
Encouraging.
Buoyed.
Improvement.
Boosted.
Welcomed.
Best.
Strongest.
Golden.
Buoyant.
So we can see there's a particular type of language that's being used here. And underlying these ways of using language, there is a story. The story is that high retail sales are good. The story is one which is in the minds of individual people, cognition, but it's also in the minds of multiple people right across a society, which we call social cognition. The story, high retail sales are good, is deeply embedded in our culture. So after revealing the stories we live by, ecolinguistics questions them from an ecological perspective. Does the story encourage people to consume less, respect the natural world, share resources more fairly, protect the environment, or other things that we believe are important to protect the ecosystems that life depends on? So if high retail sales are good, we could say that this is a destructive story, because it encourages people to buy more and more goods. And the more goods we buy, the greater the environmental impact. So the stories we live by influence how we think, talk, and act. And some stories are destructive in encouraging us to behave in ways that harm the ecosystems that life depends on. And finally, when we find stories that aren't working, that are leading to inequality or destruction of the environment, then the task of ecolinguistics is to search for new stories to live by. We're searching for ways of using language that encourage people to consume less, to respect the natural world, to share resources more fairly, and so on. So where can we look for new stories to live by? And this is actually a question for you. Where can we look?
One place to look is the language of new economics. In Bhutan, they've come up with a great concept of gross national happiness as the main goal of society.
I think Rachel Carson and other lyrical science writers tell an important story. They use technical language to show us how we're destroying the environment, but they mix it with literary language to make us care, to show that what's being lost isn't just a resource, but the living world.
In the West, there's also nature writing, stretching back to the Romantics, which has resisted industrialisation and encouraged enchantment with nature. The latest phase in the UK is new nature writing, which combines academic insight with sensitive personal exploration of the natural world.
And around the world there are indigenous sources for new, which are actually old stories to live by. So they're very useful Native American sources which resist the destructive thinking of colonialism, and that promotes a more earth-centred way of being.
And some countries like Japan still have a strong traditional culture. The story behind Japanese art, poetry and animations is that the ordinary nature around us is worthy of admiration, appreciation and respect.
So we can examine these sources to find ways of using language that can inspire people to respect other people and protect the ecosystems that life depends on. And this course will explore 8 different kinds of story we live by. It will give a toolkit for revealing the stories we live by, questioning those stories, and contributing to the search for new stories to live by.